All right. Look at that. Yeah, they always say turn your good side to the camera, but I don't have a good side, so there you go. All right. Yes, I could do that. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the November 3rd meeting of St. Albert City Council. Will be a budget meeting here and we'll go through the agenda. And to all those who are online, welcome. And I believe that we are all here with the exception of Mayor Herron, who is trying to get online. I've heard that she's having difficulty. Councillor Jolly, welcome. You're via Zoom, and then the rest of us are virtual here or in person here at the St. Albert City Hall. All right, we have an agenda before us, an adoption, and Councillor Killett, go ahead.
Thank you. That the November 3rd, 2022 special council meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
All right, fair enough. Thank you very much. I'll call a question then. All in favor?
Actually, Chair, before we do that, I had a quick question.
Okay, fair enough.
It's okay. Yeah, hi. So this is for both days, correct? Or is this just for today? Because I looked at the other schedule. It looked like Monday we're doing half and half. Is that correct? Okay. And there's nothing in here about in camera. So is there any need from administration to do anything in camera? Because we normally do have an in camera section, whether or not we use it or not.
We do not have a need now, depending where the questions go. If it's identified that we have to go in camera, we'd make that recommendation.
No, I meant like we have like an in camera section.
Yeah, I have
Okay,
nothing to
but there's nothing that will be needed to test. Okay, perfect. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, any other questions before we call for the vote? All right, then please indicate your vote and then declare the vote.
We're just waiting for Mayor Herron. She is
Is-
in the meeting now, but
Welcome, Mayor Herron, and trust that your internet connection works with us.
sorry, it looks like she's offline again. I apologize.
No apologies required.
Mark her as absent.
And that's carried unanimously for those who are able to vote. Thank you. All right. Now, we have a budget deliberation item before we get into the public presentations. And this is about how we're going to do business as a council for the duration of our budget deliberations. So, Mr. Lafleur, is he going to make a presentation, Mr. Fletcher?
He's online and I'll cede the floor to him with your indulgence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I don't have a formal presentation. The agenda report on this item is fairly lengthy. Council members who are returning from the previous council term, or actually, sorry, I misspoke. Even last year, I believe we used the same procedure. We relaxed the rules in the same way. So really all this is doing is a number of different motions to be made. The cumulative effect of them is to allow the budget presentations to unfold as they have the last couple of years, with a great deal of flexibility in terms of making motions, amending motions on the fly, asking questions as required, getting the answers, all of the things that you've come to be used to over the last 2 or 3 years in terms of making this process as smooth as possible. All of these motions combined have that effect. And then, of course, there's the final motion to go into committee of the whole after having set the new rules for committee of the whole with your previous motion. So really, I think it's fairly straightforward. If there's anyone has any questions about anything, I'm certainly more than happy to take them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hughes, I see you are requesting motion. Before I do that, I'll see if there's any questions. I thought the agenda report was well written. Mr. Lafleur, each motion had an explanation beside it, so as to why we would do that. So thank you for that.
I just had one question.
Seeing no questions, okay, Councillor Hughes, go ahead with the
Okay.
question.
This is real simple. I just want to confirm that really there's been nothing changed from the past. This is what we do every year, and there's nothing in these motions that are different than what we've done previously, correct?
Nothing different than I'd say the last 3 years. That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I can put forward the motion if you're ready.
Okay, certainly I'll accept that. Go ahead.
Okay, that's section 11.5 of the procedure bylaw 3/2018 be suspended for the 2023 budget process to allow the reordering of agenda items and the addition of information as required, though formally amending the agenda. That section 12.8 of the procedure bylaw be suspended for the 2023 budget process to allow the mayor to make motions that relinquish the chair. The section 17.1 of the procedure bylaw be suspended for the 2023 budget process to allow the mover of a motion to move an amendment to the same motion. The consideration of the proposed amendments to proposed 2023 operating and capital budgets made during presentations be automatically postponed without the need for a motion to that effect until all presentations have been completed. The council and the committee of the whole be authorized to direct administration by resolution to make changes to proposed 2023 operating capital budgets. That the budget information requests and postponed motions received to date set out as attachments in the report dated November 3rd, 2022, entitled 2023 Budget Deliberation Process are hereby accepted as presented and deemed fully part of the 2023 budget deliberation process as though they were read verbatim into the record, and the council move into the committee of the whole.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hughes. Accept multiple motions. Any opening comments?
It's what we've always done. We got to get going here.
Yeah, all right. Any other comments online? All right, seeing none. Any closing comments? Okay, fair enough. I'll call for the question then. And declare the vote when it's available.
Mayor Herron is in the meeting, but we don't have her vote recorded just yet.
Okay. Give her a moment or two.
I am on my phone, so it's going to be hard for me to type into the chat. So I'm in favor.
Thank you, Mayor Herron. So going forward, Mayor Herron, just shout out then and we'll acknowledge you if you have a question or any other things going forward. All right, declare the vote. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. So we are now in committee of the whole. And we have adopted the agenda, and the next item on the agenda is to go to the public for input today. And we have Mr. Terry Sotart, Executive Director of the Out Loud Foundation. And I see you're here, Terry. Thank you. Welcome to the microphone and welcome to council.
Thanks, Wes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the time to be able to talk with you quickly. This is Kelsey, and
Hi,
she is, the manager of the support program that we work with. And I just wanted to, for some of you who maybe don't know me as well, we started the Out Loud Foundation about 8 years ago, and of course went through growing pains, and we've got our own spot now, and that's all been going very well. But of course, with all of that has come some changes within, especially COVID, right? So COVID cost a lot of money for a lot of people. We were one of those who it did affect us. But I'm just basically here to beg that the funding be allowed for the Out Loud Foundation as it's very important. Same kind of thing with some of the other nonprofits, but for us, it's getting to be a really big deal. And we're looking to move away from the funding from the city, but that can't happen yet. So we're hoping 2023 and 2024 will be a whole lot better. But yeah, I just want Kelsey to go quickly through some of the things that the program has to offer, because we're really running this. I'm a volunteer. And so Kelsey's our full-time person, and then we have a part-time person as well. And we're looking to bring on a couple of more just because the need is so great. And so I'd like Kelsey to talk a little bit about the need.
Okay.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Kelsey Robbins and I'm the manager of the Out Loud Foundation. We have, for the past 6 to 7 months, we've been fixing our programming after the result of COVID, where we kind of had to move completely virtual. When I started to transition programming back to in-person, we were attending to probably 10 to 12 youth virtually at that time. Since then, we have served 186 youth since April of 2022, and those are individual youth. 90% of our people are coming back for more than one program right now, and 66% of the youth that we're serving are trans youth between the ages of 13 to 15. As Terry said, we do plan to kind of leave away from the municipal funding. The government of Alberta has or the government of Canada, sorry, the federal government has recently announced an 2S LGBTQI action plan that they have announced a lot of funding for organizations like ours to help prioritize and sustain our community action and help engage everyone in Canada in fostering a 2S LGBTQI plus inclusive environment. Those things, they do have money solidified for that. That has not been released yet and is not available for us to apply for. So we are just kind of trying to show what we've been doing. We have provided a lot of wraparound supports, helping kids stay at home. We partner with FSSI, FCSS, St. Albert Library. We partner with the St. Albert FRC. We partner with St. Albert Public Schools. We really try to wrap around these youth, and we've been working really hard to kind of keep them at home. And so far it has been successful. Not one of our youth has been kicked out of home yet or has left by their own regard. That we are aware of, and that is because of the funding that goes towards the staff to support these youth. We are currently operating at about 1 staff to about 20 to 25 youth when we're running programming because the need is so high. So our goal is just to get that into a really reasonable number of 1 staff to every 15 youth, which is the request for increased funding. So we don't plan to kind of keep coming back and doing this every year, but we're asking for another year to kind of keep us afloat so we can continue to serve the community until we can get some sustainable funding from the government of Canada.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I see that we have your handout. Any questions for Out Loud? Councillor Mackay, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation. Sorry, Terry, I can't see you anymore.
There.
That's my fault, not yours. That was my height restriction. So, I mean, and you're aware, you still have to apply in front of the committee, right? In the sense of that, yeah. All right. So I just want to make sure that.
Yes, and that has already been done. We just want to hammer home the need for the funding. One of our funding sources is the outside agency grant that helps us with our rents. So we know that's something that everybody's been talking about. So we just wanted to be here to kind of say our piece on that.
Good. No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the extra insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for your presentation. And next we have Cheryl Dumont. Is Cheryl here? Is she online? I don't see her in chambers here. Good. Cheryl, is Cheryl online?
No, Cheryl is not online.
Marilyn McGreer. Is Marilyn here?
We do not have her online.
Okay, well, so Cheryl Dumont was going to represent the St. Albert Housing Society and Marilyn McGreer was going to represent Vocational Pathways Association. So perhaps they'll be here on Monday. And we'll certainly welcome them at that time. Seeing no one else here to speak, we'll move on to our budget presentations then. Before we get into it, Council, I just want to go over a couple of things. So on our agenda tonight, of course, we're going to be going through the various departments of the city. And you see that we've got 6 all told. Our intent is to get through at least 3 today. And we'll count that if we get to the 3rd one and it's done before 4, we'll try for the 4th one today. If that finishes after 4 o'clock, then we'll continue on with planning and engineering today. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? So absolutely, then we're in committee of the whole, so we can ask all sorts of questions. Go ahead, Councilor.
No, I was just calling you a taskmaster. That's all.
Oh,
Practice whip, yeah.
Oh, well, all right. Well, you know what? I got this thing here,
Yeah.
so don't get out of line.
Well, the cat's away.
Anyway, so the way it's going to work here, and this was discussed at agenda planning the other day, is that we'll go through each sort of division, and then we'll pause for questions for at the end. And I'll remind everybody, it's questions, not debate today. So if you sort of get into debate, I'll try to bring you back, but just keep that in mind. And yeah, so we're ready to rock and roll. Councillor Jolly, any questions or anything? Mayor Herron, any questions, comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll turn it over to you, Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, your worship, council. As the next step in the 2023 budget presentation process, it's my pleasure today to present the financial plan and the 2023 budget for council, executive leadership, and general government. Further along in this presentation, I will also discuss corporate financing, which includes that portion of the tax levy used to support required debt payment, provide contributions to municipal capital reserves and projects, and also includes common corporate revenues and expenses, such as interest income, bank fees, and lease expenses. Next slide, please. As a contextual reminder, I'll begin with a quick overview of your strategic plan, as this is used as a seminal foundational component in building the budget. The strategic plan signals to residents, businesses, community organizations, and other stakeholders where St. Albert is headed over the your four-year council term. Your council strategic plan for 2022 to 25 describes 5 priority areas, which obviously you will focus on and provides direction to administration. Those focus areas being economic prosperity, downtown vibrancy, community well-being, adapting to a changing natural environment, and financial stability. These priorities are being actioned through the corporate business plan over the next 4 years, and the 2023 budget has been built to address them, as well as to maintain council-approved services and service levels. At the October 24 council meeting, the overall budget was presented. As discussed in that presentation, administration is proposing a 4.6% municipal property tax increase for the 2023 year. This increase relates to maintaining most service levels and maintaining service levels, and includes a 1.5% increase in infrastructure funding for RMR as previously directed by council. Effectively then, if you accept the 1.5% as a given on an annual basis, we're looking at a 3.1% increase in addition to that for the total of 4.6. These functional presentations today and Monday will provide an overview of the services provided to the community and any operating business cases or capital charters required to maintain our service levels and move forward initiatives related to the corporate business plan nested within your strategic priorities. All this is presented with a view towards answering your questions to inform your decisions in the coming months. Next slide, please. Moving into our first functional presentation, as you are well aware, council is the city's governing body, providing high-level strategic direction in developing corporate strategy and related policies, ensuring municipal powers are exercised appropriately, and ensuring municipal duties and functions are fully fulfilled. Executive leadership provides direct advice to you as council and corporate leadership on all aspects of the municipal corporation, including supporting council in your governance role. And this function currently funds the offices of the Chief Administrative Officer and the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, which include some subcomponents. Firstly, community relations, which facilitates public participation, Indigenous relations, and supports key partnerships for the city of St. Albert. They look to proactively mitigate issues, address emerging concerns, and enhance the city's reputation. They also serve as our liaison for the St. Albert Public Library. Second, government relations provides policy advice and research to you as council and to administration writ large to ensure the strategic priorities and interests of the organization move forward. This is done through relationships with other orders of government, most notably our municipal neighbors and the government of Alberta and regional stakeholders as well. The general government functional area provides strategic guidance, planning, advice, and resources to council and the corporation to support the city's initiatives today and in the future for the benefit of St. Albert and St. Albertans. The following departments are funded through this function: legal and legislative services. They provide leadership, governance support, and advice to council, administration, and the public. As experts in legislative and legal matters and records management, they ensure consistency and compliance for effective decision-making. Economic development is responsible for attracting new industrial and commercial businesses to St. Albert while supporting our existing 2,700 businesses and helping them to grow and flourish. Financial services and information technology provides strategic financial and IT leadership and management for the organization and the community through guidance, analysis, and advice to enable sound decision-making. As stewards of the city's finances, they ensure the organization is in good financial standing and compliant while managing risk through a solutions-based approach. Human Resources, Safety, and Environment advises on and delivers people-centric services and solutions that support clients in the city of St. Albert to achieve our organizational goals while also maintaining a healthy natural environment and ensuring its sustainability for future generations. And finally, Strategic Services and Communications. Strategic Services and Communications takes a unified strategic approach to support the city in managing, and communicating the work we do to serve the community. They collaborate and identify innovative solutions for the city across the broad spectrum of our operations. Next slide, please. We'll now begin by discussing council, executive leadership, and general government functions and the net budget for each. This slide shows the overall impact for the 2023 proposed budget as compared to the 2022 revised budget for each of these functions. In broad strokes, for council, we have a minimal change for the prior year, and there are no significant changes to the budget to highlight. For executive leadership, the net impact is a decrease of $352,000 as a result of, on a revenue side, an $863,000 decrease in transfers from reserves due to the one-time funding for internal auditors' reviews and municipal naming and library review. For expenses, $185,000 decrease in salaries, wages, and benefits due to a one-time funding of municipal naming and completion of the municipal intern program. A $621,000 decrease in contracted services due to one-time funding for the internal audit review and municipal naming. And finally, $387,000 recommended decrease in transfers to and from operations and capital due to reduction in transfers to the library. For general government, the net impact is an increase of $951,000, the most significant of the three. And it's as a result of, on the revenue side, $100,000 increase in the penalties on late property tax payments, $82,000 decrease in transfer from the reserve due to the one-time funding of a purchase audit, which will not occur in 2023. On the expense side, $649,000 increase in salaries, wages, and benefits due to an annualization of salary costs and the transfer of marketing staff from other departments being centralized in strategic services and communications, as well as some business case implications. $286,000 increase in contracted and general services due to increase in software licensing fees, offset partially by the one-time funding of the purchase audit, which will not occur in 2023. Next slide, please. After several years of postponed resource requests and lean operations, most notably the deliberate decision during the pandemic years to ensure the health and welfare of St. Albertans, several FTEs have been identified as being required to maintain existing services and move council priorities forward. I'll go through them briefly. The addition of a financial controller for $82,500 will alleviate work capacity constraints facing our existing controllers and will allow for proactive financial supports to departments and the ability to work on financial projects, including grant applications, which is significant to our operations, and the council's priority of a multi-year budgeting. Environmental compliance associate. Currently, this is a term position and is responsible for assisting the city's environmental management system, including maintaining an ISO 14001 certification and managing corporate environmental risks and opportunities. Converting this term position to a permanent FTE will ensure the city's operations remain compliant with regulatory requirements, avoid contractor costs associated with field work, and alleviate repeated turnover costs and training. This will require $10,600 to convert from the term to the permanent FTE. Currently, we have a non-permanent abilities management advisor that works on internal occupational and non-occupational claims management and coordinates return to work strategies for our employees. Converting this to a permanent position will decrease delays in claims management processes designed to promote a return to work for ill and injured employees. This will save claim costs, preventing escalating premiums and overtime costs. The funding for this role would be reallocated from an existing source within the HR and safety base budget, so no additional dollars are required, but the FTE is requested to be approved. Following on the essential theme of ensuring the safety and wellness of our employees, we're proposing a $47,000 be set aside to create a safety enhancements fund to address emergent safety enhancements or initiatives. The rapid development of technology has hastened the transition to a digital-first culture. Municipalities, and in point of fact, all levels of government, have seen a steady increase in the volume, frequency, complexity, and severity of cybersecurity threats, attacks, and breaches. These can come from any number of sources and can have debilitating financial, operational, and personnel implications. The IT security analyst will ensure that the city's data, information, and services are protected from intentional or unintentional access and destruction. The budget for this is $81,300 in 2023. Procurement Services is currently implementing the recommendations of the internal audit report on procurement completed in December of 2019, which also aligns with your financial sustainability priority. In order to realize the opportunities identified in the audit, 2 positions are assessed as required. The procurement specialist will address current workload capacity, procurement audit work, and implementation, and will require a budget of $82,400. The IT business analyst and purchasing audit is a 1-year continuation of an existing term position requiring $108,400 that is identifying the business and technical requirements for technology solutions needed to implement the procurement audit recommendations. Supporting both operational and strategic leadership through the organization, the need is for an additional 2 FTEs at a cost of $480,000 to the executive leadership team. This will support the advancement of your strategic goals and oversight of your city operations. The proposed structure supports a reasonable and effective span of control and allows focused effort towards both strategic and operational issues and needs, which is to say, optimizing our day-to-day operations while setting the conditions for our success in the future. Both are critical to the successful growth of our city and the provision of our highly valued services to our committee. Next slide, please. I will now shift to corporate financing. The corporate financing function includes that portion of the tax levy used to support required debt payment, provide contributions to municipal capital reserve projects, and also includes common corporate revenues and expenses such as interest income, bank fees, and lease expenses. The slide on the screen shows the overall impact for 2023 proposed budget as compared to the 2022 revised budget, and the net impact is an increase of $1.519 million, $1,519,000, and is mainly due to, on the revenue side, $900,000 increase in assessment growth revenue applied to the base, $362,000 increase in sales and user fees from utility administration fees based on projected corporate assumptions, a $2.5 million increase in franchise fees due to the increase in electrical franchise free rate and delivery charges on both electrical and gas, $400,000 increase in income from interest based on rates, investment base, and investments in long-term instruments. And finally, a $1.003 million increase in transfer from reserves to fund debt payments for Range Road 260 and North St. Albert Trail. On the expense side, $2.96 million. We see an increase in debenture interest and principal repayments related to the work on Range Road 260, North St. Albert Trail, and Ray Gibbon Drive. $2.632 million increase in other expenditures for corporate contingency, $986,000 increase in transfer to reserves due to the approved 1.5% increase for infrastructure funding strategy, offset by decreases in public art and community capital grant transfers. Next slide, please. In summary, the 2023 budget, the council function will essentially be balanced. The executive leadership function will have an overall net decrease of $352,000, mainly as a result of one-time projects not continuing into 2023. The general government function will have a net impact increase of $951,000, key influencers being the increase in contracted and general services for IT, the marketing staff centralization and move from other departments to strategic services, as well as business case recommendations. And lastly, the corporate financing function will have a net impact increase of $1.5 million, primarily the result of increased contingency funding and debenture payments. Pending your questions, this concludes my presentation for this function. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fletcher, and I'll open the floor to any questions that we have. Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Thanks. I can get started. So what is, just out of curiosity, obviously at this point, the assessment growth revenue, what are we anticipating it to be for 2022, like the total number? Like right now we're basing it on 2 million going forward. What is it expected to be this year? Do we know that number?
I'll just maybe pass it over to Anne and see if she has an update on that. I thank you. Through to keep the chair to council, I'll pass that over to Stephen Bannerin. If they have an updated assessment on any changes to the 2 million.
Sure.
Through you, Councillor Hughes, or through Mayor Councillor Hughes, the anticipated budget is still approximately 2 million as we see it in 2022.
Okay, so it's actually just meeting our expected target for this year. That's correct?
It is, the red growth is doing a little better, but the non-residential growth is a little slower this year. So we're still anticipating that 2 million.
Oh, yeah, okay. So that's why we're coming in at 900,000 for next year, because it's the 45% or ish of the 2 million. Is that right? That's why it's on the books at not 2 million, but 900,000, because that's what comes off the tax.
That's correct.
Okay. Just so you know, I'm going to ask for an IR for the breakdown for each department. I'm not seeing that in the budget documents in the financial summaries, just for general government. So I'll be asking for that breakdown, but I'm not expecting you to have it this second. So just letting you know that's going to be coming. The other things. Oh, so the interest rates have gone up, which obviously increases our debt payment, but it also increases our short-term interest. So have we accounted for that in the budget, and if so, by how much?
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I believe it was right in Mr. Fletcher's presentation. So correct, we will be earning more interest on our things, and I believe we said we had increased it by about 400,000. I think
That is correct. The interest expense is increasing by interest incomes by 400,000, and that's offset by an increase in interest expense too.
So when did they keep increasing it like every week right now? When was the last time we updated our anticipated short-term interest rates and revenue expectations?
So we've been adjusting them each quarterly, and you can see in the quarter by like what we're earning. And then we've adjusted them with the budgeted assumptions for this budget. So
when was it last updated in October then, or when is the last time we went and provided this number to get to the 400,000? What was the last date-ish that we were updating it to? Do you know?
The budget was done in August, so it would have been on the rates that were at that point in time. Keep in mind too, we have a budget adjustment AR that we come right before the mill rate. So if there's significant changes in the rates, we will incorporate at that point.
At that point. Awesome. Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Hughes, if I could just add to that as well, we also have to keep in mind with a lot of our investments that we do, they're longer term investments, right? Once you're sort of locked into a 10-year piece, even though interest rates are going up daily, we wouldn't necessarily be getting those interest rates right away. But we do have a great third party that we work with on our long-term investments that works with us to sell and rebuy so that we're always getting the best interest rate that we can. But we are locked into different types of things for longer periods of time.
Yeah, I know some is short and some medium, some are long. So I was just curious more about the short, because that's right now we're going. Although maybe something longer expiring, I don't know, but that's I'm not going to worry about that detail right now. If I go to page 42 at the budget, I had an IR about other expenditures. And so for 2022, it says 7,794,000. And so when I asked about that, and it was said it was to accommodate the increases to staff salaries, and it didn't have anything else in there. And I'm just trying to figure out how 2022 is at 7 million. It looks like it's going up by around 4 million, 3.5 million a year. Actually 3.5 next year, and then 2 something for the next 2. So how do we start at 7 million on that? I'm just trying to understand how we got to the gate on the 7.7 million on staffing for year 1.
And again, perhaps I'll turn that over to Anne to answer that question.
So through the chair to Councillor Hughes, which were in reference are you referring to the consolidated other expenditures?
Yep, on page 42. That was what I had in my IR. So
so that's referring to, so you're referring to the base for 22?
Yeah, so if we go to the page 42 under 2022 revised, it says other expenditures basically 7.8 million. And then it increases by about 2 to 3 million. But this year, the start is higher than the increases are. So, and they're the only thing that I was given was it was to cover adjustments to staff and retroactive pay. So I'm just trying to put that together as to how we come up to 7.8? Because I know that the staffing, I don't think that the raises total 7.8 million.
You just give us a couple minutes. We'll
Yeah.
just, I'm just gonna look into that answer and I'll get back to you on that one.
I can let that sit and you guys can go on that. That one just came to me today, so otherwise I would have put it back into writing, because I think it might take you a couple minutes. The other question I had, IT services. Let me just go to the request chart. And it's written in like 3-point font, so I got to put it really close to me here. Okay, so the IT services for the cybersecurity, we don't have anybody doing cybersecurity right now, or just help me understand what's going on with the cybersecurity.
Through the chair to council, I'm going to pass that over to Joanne Graham, our senior manager, information technology.
Thank you, Anne. So through the chair to Councillor Hughes, we do have one individual that is currently dedicated to that as a senior security analyst. However, as mentioned in the operating business case, the frequency and complexity of the cyber threats we are currently experiencing is driving us to need to supplement that current position.
Okay, so have we actually been experiencing? So we're just being hit with more than we can handle, is what you're telling me right now, or I'm just trying to understand the situation?
Yes, that is the case. We are so far being able to, I would actually qualify that as just barely handling it. However, we do have gaps when it comes to vacation and sick coverage. And with the increase in what we are seeing, we anticipate that we will have significant difficulties covering that going forward.
Okay. So the main purpose for this is to cover vacation and sick leave, or is there other?
No, it
purpose?
is no, it is actually also to address what we are seeing as a growing trend in the volume and complexity of the cybersecurity threats. We are also going to be launching next year more enhanced training for our staff in terms of phishing and phishing training, which of course a phishing email is the emails that come with links to either malware or to entice employees to give up their login identifications. So it's very important that we enhance that training and the testing. So this individual will also be very much a part of that program.
Okay, and the procurement specialist. I understand that, but we've been, I guess I have the internal audit committee's meeting this month, I think. I'm looking forward to the update that we're getting there, but it's just so I understand at this point, how close are we to finishing getting those recommendations completed? Because we're going on to year 3 of trying to get these done. So how close are we to actually completing the audit recommendations?
To the chair, to Councillor Hughes, I believe that we are probably halfway through, and we'll be having recommendations starting in 23 and 24 for completion.
Why is it taking as long as it's taking?
It's a requirement of manpower. And so this is why we're asking for the position, so we'll be able to move those recommendations forward in a more quicker way.
But we've had one person dedicated to that for at least 1 year, if not 2, just dedicated to completing this goal, unless that's because that's what we had last year as well. So I guess I'm just trying to understand. I'm not in that room as to why it's taking as long as it is when we are dedicating resources just to this goal.
Absolutely. And I'll just provide some context. We really did get put far behind when COVID hit us. Our existing procurement people, you can imagine during COVID, we actually had to have staff sitting out in lawn chairs in front of St. Albert Place in order to accept tenders because we didn't have our new software in yet. So it was taking all of our people even more time just to do the basic stuff. So the first year we honestly didn't get a lot accomplished. We did get a fair bit accomplished in 21 in terms of the procurement software that's being implemented. So we're starting to really get some speed on some of these pieces, and just overall, just the needs of procurement in the city as we grow. We're doing more tenders, we're doing more quotes, we're doing and it's just the general workload of the day-to-day business is been kind of interfering and growing at the same time as we're trying to get these. And I don't know, Anne, if you wanted to add anything else.
I'll just add, we have made significant progress in the e-procurement project, and we're going to be continuing the implementation into 223. So we're hoping to have that fully implemented by the end of 223. But we made significant progress on 2 to 3 modules on the e-procurement solutions, which we'll bring forward and the audit committee on the 14th to detail further exactly what work is being done and the progress on those other audit recommendations.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So the intention of the audit was to find efficiencies, and then I'm seeing a request for an additional auditor, procurement specialist. So I guess, can you help me come to terms, like you're telling me that it's getting busier, and I understand that. And I know that we've had issues with all of the lockdowns, et cetera, that have had issues. But we're asking for a permanent person here on this. So can you kind of expand on that?
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. So this position is required to address like the growing demand. We've been resulting in a lot of workload capacity. So currently, what we're experiencing is significant delays with current capacity of addressing the procurement and supporting that with the department. So right now, the procurement specialists are triaging procurement activities, and there's a backlog. And this is impacting all the department's services. In addition, the audit recommendations will result in some efficiencies, but what we are finding too is it's more oversight, new processes. And an example of more oversight is we're monitoring and managing contract management. So that's just an example of some of the things that the oversights being required and added. But I think a lot of it is just dealing with the workload and addressing the backlog of that.
What kind of a backlog are we looking at? Like for timeline, like let's say I'm putting one in now, and then because you guys are so swamped, how long should I take to expect to get it completed? I guess that would be beyond normal.
Some have been experiencing weeks to months, and that's where you've been seeing in some of the variances of projects being delayed, and some of our, and also we're dealing, if the tenders and the procurement processes are late, then we're also, it's compounded further with the supply chain issues. So there's a number of factors, but that is definitely the triaging and the support with the procurement is one of the other issue that we're experiencing. And it has been for a while.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hughes, sorry, could I just add one more piece as well? A lot of the recommendations out of the procurement audit actually weren't to result in efficiencies. Really, there was gaps in some of our processes that where they had identified risks. And so a lot of these processes and things we're trying to implement are reducing risk for the city. But in a lot of cases, it actually involves more work. So some things will create efficiencies, but actually a lot of the things we're putting in place actually increase the workload, but reduce the risk for the city. So still very important. But, you know, overall, I don't think we're going to see a net efficiency savings, but much lower risk for the city.
Okay.
Can I just check something? Councillor Jolly, Mayor Herron, are you able to hear Ms. McMorty when she talks?
Yep.
Okay,
I
fair
can-
enough. Yeah, okay, fair enough. It just, thank you. Go ahead.
If anybody has any questions, I don't know if Councillor Jolly or Mayor Herron have anything. I'm willing to stop and then give them a turn, just so you know, I don't want to hog the floor. So if they have anything. Just letting you know.
Any questions? You're free to continue on.
Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the other thing I had was, and this is, I don't really know where to put this, so I'm just going to put it here and see if you guys can answer. So for the HR safety, we have the increase to the cost for the environmental compliance associated 10.6, and I'm assuming that's for benefits. But then when we have the engineering services, they're only for 1,500 for the additional cost for the FTE. And I'm just trying to figure out why there's a discrepancy between those two numbers. And is the 10.6 benefits, or is it less than that? Or what am I missing?
Thank you. I think I'll defer to Ryan Stovall to start, and then he can move from there.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, this actually may involve Anne a little bit in the process. My understanding is for our ECA, the Environmental Compliance Associate, we do need the benefits portion and a few other components that we don't have budgeted, where in engineering they had some of the funds already budgeted and they needed a smaller portion to bring them up to the full complement. So that's where like if you think of benefits at around 20% of wages, that's how I'm getting close to that $10,000 dollar value. My understanding is engineering had a chunk of it in their temp wages already to convert over to permanent funding.
Okay, were the people actually being given the benefits as a temp? Or was it that you just had the money set aside for that? Okay, or were they already getting the funding? Were we already paying that, or is it just already found money, I guess?
Again, for engineering, I can't speak fully how they've bundled it together. I believe they have project dollars and a few other things that they were able to find and minimize their ask. Donnie, I see, jumped on, and she might correct where I was. So,
Okay.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, to add on top of what Ryan just spoke about, engineering has 3 temporary employees now that is currently funded from capital for temporary dollars, and there's no benefits that's being paid as part of temporary position that they have. So that's why we have a very minimal amount to convert them to permanent FTEs.
So, but if it's in capital, it's not in operating, right? So then it would.
It's not in operating yet, correct?
We have a finite amount. So if we're
Yes.
converting them over from a capital budget to an operating, then the full amount would get transferred over, right? Because capital only is a bundle.
It is, and they're tied into capital projects because those temp staff are contributing to capital, RMR or capital growth. So we'll continue to fund them through capital dollars for their bulk of the salary. That's the intent. We are not converting them to operating yet.
Okay, so this is, so just to understand. So we have RMR projects that are being funded through the RMR capital, and these staff people will be paid through the RMR capital.
Correct.
Okay. But then if we were to drop the RMR capital project cost, that could affect the ability of these people to get paid.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So the intent there is when the projects gets diminished, then we have to think about how we want to continue the resources or not. So that's also the benefit from that point.
I guess my question on that is because the thing is, once we take an FTE on, we have them on. So why didn't, I'm going to look to maybe Diane at this point, is why didn't we just say we'll drop the amount in RMR and put one in as an FTE so that it was clear that these people are not a term, because once you put them on, they're not term. Like once in an FTE, you're not a term. So when the project comes to conclusion or for any reason gets reduced, we still have the liability of that person on the books. So is it possible for us to just to convert it over so it's clearer and reduce the RMR and put it onto the other side, or will that affect the taxes? I'm just trying to, I guess it would affect the taxes, wouldn't it? Okay, it's just a difficult situation because it does affect the RMR. Anybody else have a question? Not yet, okay. One more thing, okay. I'm not going to look to you, Diane, because I'm asking questions about these positions. So, my question is, I first of all, I'm not disputing the value that these positions provide to the organization. What I'm wondering about is how have we paid for this position in this current structure as it is to date?
Yep. Thank you, Councillor. To date, essentially, they've been funded by rolling vacancies, right? So as we find attrition or we've got an opening and it takes a month, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months to hire, that money is not expended on that current position until the hire's in place. So that has been enough to fund those 2 positions through the stand-up under the interim DCAO at the time through to the end of this calendar year.
I know it sounds odd, but could you continue to do that? I know it's cleaner if we just say we'll just cough up the 480,000, but could we continue to use attrition money to pay for these 2 or whatever roles? I mean, basically you have 121 million budget. So could we continue to use that method to cover this situation?
I think the answer is, I guess we could try, but there's no assurance on a month-to-month basis of how many positions will be available, or a year-to-year basis. 1 year it could be 10, 1 year it could be 2. And so if we fall short of that, then those positions, which are effectively still term positions that are being worked over for the longer term, suffer without sufficient money. So the only way to really achieve that stability is to create those 2 FTEs and codify them.
But if we could have the FTEs and you could still do the other funding, I'm hearing from you. It's just a bit more awkward.
Well, awkward, but it's not guaranteed, because we don't know on a year-to-year basis what those rolling vacancies are going to look like, and there could be insufficient funds, on a year to actually pay for those two positions.
Okay. Just, anybody else has any questions? I have no problem.
Well, I'll ask one question here, while you get prepared for more. So when you report in the budget for a new position, it's fully loaded, right? Meaning that the benefits and all of the rest are attached to the amount. However, that's not necessarily what the individual at the end of the day gets paid. And I say this because I read it in the paper, you know, people are dividing the number by 2 and say, oh my goodness, right? So my question is this: what is the overhead rate that the city of St. Albert pays for management staff?
Perhaps I'll defer to Ryan Stovall to speak to the specifics of that, but you're quite correct in your characterization of the gross number.
Through the chair, I guess to the chair in this case. We budget based on the midpoint or approximately the midpoint of the salary range for a position. And then we gross it up based on benefits, pension, and some funds for learning and a few offsets that are related to that. So an FT, you can kind of look at it at the midpoint of salary plus about 22% gives you how we estimate a position. A person coming in the door could range. So, I mean, we could start them lower than that midpoint or potentially higher based on the qualifications they bring to the position.
Fair enough, 22%. That rings a bell for me for many years in the business as well. So just so everybody understands what's going on here. Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Bermansky, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Through the chair, I'll be brief in my questions. Related to the environmental compliance associate, in the background, it said that it's a contract nature of this position. So I do know a lot of people that work in this field, and it is traditionally contract work. So, and because that's the nature, why do you want to change it?
Thank you. I'll go to HR and safety. Ryan again.
Through the chair to Councillor Bermansky, what we've found with, so historically we did use contractors to do a bunch of our compliance work and environment. We found that contractors were charging much more than we could do in-house. So we started using a term resource. So we've actually been doing that for about 3 to 4 years now, and we found efficiencies through the term resource. So an employee on staff being paid term wages. The issue that we've now run into is that they turn over about every year. So we're trying to lock, our request is ultimately to convert term wages into a permanent position to try and retain a person long-term and gain the efficiency of their expertise without paying the premium for contracted services.
Okay, I was just questioning why it's traditionally a contract position, like why people go that direction in most cases.
I might need Megan's assistance if she's on there. I think there is a value of relying on contractors because you have different expertise in-house if you go to a contracted service. So you might have biologists, chemists, different things in a contracted agency. We do have 2, actually we have, I think, an environmental expert, a biologist, and I believe, I'm not sure what our third resource has, but we are starting to build some of those expertise in-house, which is allowing us to avoid that contracted service again at a premium. So there is merits of using a contractor. We're just hoping that what we're seeing, especially because it's things that come up repeatedly, there is some level of repetition that we get the expertise in-house at a lower cost.
Okay, and if you have the person in-house, that doesn't guarantee that the next type of expertise that you need will not have to be contracted outside again as well.
Absolutely. There's the one-offs or strange things that come up, but we're doing our best to keep those to a minimum. I'd say the majority of things are things that we can handle in-house.
Okay, I appreciate the answers. And then I have another question here on the human resources and safety and environment. It says, I don't know if you can hear me. I'm leaning over to the speaker. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I need a longer cord for sure. Okay, so emergent, it says the current status for emergent safety items when identified need to be addressed. I think that we in the last few years have been through as much emergent safety as we've ever seen. So is this just for projecting in case something else comes up, or is there a specific intent in this one?
So I believe this is for the safety enhancements business case is what you're referring to. The way we've funded that has been on reserve backing, and actually we've exhausted the reserve and are seeking to recover it. This would guarantee a fixed and set budget that if we had an emergent safety need, whether it be a new PPE or a new piece of equipment or a new, I can't even come up with all the scenarios that it could be, we can kind of jump on it right immediately. And we have the budget set aside for it, which currently, as you guys recall, it is reserve backed right now.
Okay, so you're creating a fund in case is what you're.
I'd hate to call it an in case that we don't expect to use. I'd say it's a fund that we want ready to use and we're becoming proactive for. So if an employee identifies a need in public operations and it's proactive, it's something that we haven't even thought of, we could also implement those as well. It's something that stops our employees from getting hurt, possibly in a proactive way as well.
Okay, thank you again. And then one last question in the executive leadership. In the guest reference here, it's saying that prior to 2017, there was one CAO, but as long as I've been here, there's been a CAO and a deputy CAO. And then we had an interim CAO and 2 interim deputy CAOs. And now we have a new CAO and 3 deputy CAOs. So I don't know where the transition has been proved from stuff in the past, because I wasn't here for the stuff in the past. And the jobs listed below those areas are still managers that I still see existing. So I just want a clarification if it's definitely 1 CAO and 3 deputy CAOs that you're looking for.
Thank you. I think just by way of context, in the past, there's been a CAO and as many as 6 at the time called general managers. That has ebbed and flowed, and then ultimately the decision was made to go to the CAO and the deputy CAO. What we're looking at now would be an executive leadership team, a total of 4, including myself, a DCAO, and we can come up with a nifty name, but the ADCAO positions. But essentially that is an executive leadership team of 4 people.
Okay, and so the interim deputy CAOs would not be called CAOs if this passed, or deputy CAOs if this is passed?
I think we've come up with a term. It could be general manager. It could be a number of other things, but effectively they're a level subordinate to the DCAO, CAO.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bermansky. Councillor McKay.
Yeah, I'll be just quick in relation to some of the comments so far. Raises the question, some of the positions that we're looking at we are currently staffed. We're looking to make them permanent. Usually when we are approving new positions, there's usually a 6-month lag time in budgeting and just so that we can actually get out there, get the job description, have the competition, and then make the hiring and whatever. So logistically, how does this impact the budget now, or does it have any impact on the budget in relation to the fact that potentially we're just converting existing positions? So is there any impact at all on the budget with that change?
Through the chair. So typically in our budget guiding principles policy, we budget our new positions with an April 1st start date. So any position that is truly new in this list would have been calculated with an April 1st start date. Where we have cases where there's incumbents already in the position, we just put it forward as the full year funding because they would just continue on from January 1.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes.
Okay, I just got a couple left here. So I'm just wondering, and for that page 42 question that I had, do you want me just to put that in as a formal IR, or do you guys have an answer?
No, I
about
have,
the,
through the chair to Councillor Hughes, I have a question. So the prior year amount has a 5 million equipment charge expense. So that's for the internal equipment charges, and then the remainder is contingency that is still required, but has not yet been allocated. So to come to that 7.7. And so we didn't speak to it in the variance because the variance of course, the equipment charges are in those expense, and the variance is mainly due to that contingency.
okay, you kind of cut out on me a little bit and I was listening really
Okay,
carefully. So
sorry,
just, not you, it's me, but can you just say it to me one more time?
so the prior year 2002 amount of 7.7 includes around $5 million in equipment, internal equipment charges expense. So and the remainder is contingency. So when we spoke to the backgrounder on the variance, the equipment charges are in that 223 amount. So the variance is related to the contingency.
Okay, so the total, the 7.8 million is from equipment charges and not from cost of living charges? That's what the BIR said. So I'm just trying to, is it both?
So
Is
the
that-
7.7 is made up of approximately 5 million in equipment charges.
Okay, and then the increases going forward are on the expected COLA, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Got it. Okay, actually, let me just stop. Let me just figure this out one more time with the end. So I understand the 7.7. When we go to the 11, is it because it's cumulative that it's going up to 11? So it's like the 7.7 is there and it's rolling to the 2023 and rolling forward again, and that's why the numbers are increasing? Or is it a different factor that's making it go up to 11.3?
No, it's a rolling increase, and it's always incorporating that prior year impact that hasn't been yet allocated.
Okay, got it. Just so that I'm on the same pages here. I had one other question about the financial controller. So one of the things that was mentioned in your presentation, Mr. Fletcher, was about having a grant specialist. But I remember a few years ago, we hired specifically a grant specialist. I remember debating it. So we actually hired for this position. So can you explain why we'd need somebody else to do that position?
I'll just start by saying you're absolutely correct. We do have a grant specialist, and then I will turn it over to Anne to provide additional clarity.
Thank you. And through the chair to Councillor Hughes. You are correct, Councillor Hughes. We do have a grant accountant. What we are finding is due to the complexity and volume of grants and the oversight and complexity of working with multiple departments and collaborating on initiatives in short timeframes, we are noticing that we're requiring more oversight at a higher level and analysis required for the grants. So that is a piece of the job description that we would be requiring.
So it's become more complex than it was before, or we're getting a higher volume, or?
It is, yeah, it's due to a higher volume and the complexity. So the overall, so what council's been hearing, where overall our continuous capital grants have been reduced, which has, then we've been working on getting more opportunities for grants, any opportunities, trying to look at them. And there is increased opportunities, which then our applications, a lot of them for really high dollars, more complex, require more analysis and more collaboration between multiple departments.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for everyone's patience. Thanks.
Councillor Bermansky.
Thank you again through the chair. Just two more quick questions on, does the government relations department actually work on grant procurement as well? Outside government relations?
Thank you. Not in term, they identify grant opportunities certainly and assist with some of the coordination, but they are not the specialist in terms of the nuts and bolts of the grant agreement. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Thank you, CEO Fletcher. Through the chair and to Councilor Ronansky, the intergov relations do provide input on a lot of the grants coordination, but they do not. They're not responsible for. So, but basically on each grant that comes through that would have a relations with the government, they would be doing a lot of the background digging for that.
Okay, and then the last question on FT full-time job placements created. Is there a probationary period in government? I'm not sure. I'm used to the public. There is. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, there was a question there? Nope. Okay, fair enough. All right.
Sorry, just to be on the record, yes, there is a probationary period, sir.
All right. Councillor Hughes?
Okay, I, it's gonna bother me if I'm up at night, so I don't ask it, so I should just ask it. Okay, so this is for my own personal health. The HR, the one that we have no costs associated with it, and so we're converting somebody over from that. I'm just, where was the money for this that I missed? Like, it's great that we're not charging more, but how did we find the money for that full person?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, it's interesting where I didn't have the benefits and pension cost for the environmental compliance associate. We had some contract dollars set aside for using a third party to adjudicate claims. So what I'm looking to do, or what how I'm seeking to fund that role, is basically use dollars we have budget for, deliver it in-house entirely, and therefore just transfer budget money between accounts to deliver the service. So the money already exists in budget, and that's where it's coming from.
So, just so I understand, Ryan, just because I'm getting older, so I'd like to repeat things to myself. So we had the money budgeted in contract, and we're just shifting it over to the other one, and that's how we're accommodating it. And we're expecting the cost for this to be less than it was under contract?
Yes.
Okay. And the savings for that, are we applying, I'm assuming we're applying it to the other person as well? Or like,
Well,
because it costs less, did we decrease the budget, or did we apply it to this other guy or person?
We're suggesting to move what was a portion of the contracted dollars wholly over to fund this FTE. We've actually kind of made a decision that we're going to use a term person because we didn't have the FTE. So we're already delivering that service model. We just don't have the FTE to deliver it permanently.
Okay. And then the rest of it, we're still keeping as contract in case you require it for contract. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, there's a scope of the work that we deliver that is still contracted out. Highly complex mental health claims beyond 30 days. We typically involve a third party at some point.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. And before we move on to our next division, let me just check with Councillor Jolly or Mayor Herron to see if you have any questions.
All my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Herron. You're okay? Very good. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to the DCAO, Carrie Hiltz, for the next presentation.
Well, thank you, Chairperson and members of council. It's my pleasure to present the Community and Recreation Service Plan and Budget. Slide. Community Recreation Service Function area provides external services in the area of culture, community, and social development, as well as recreation and parks. The function also acts as a liaison for local boards and outside agencies, such as Arts and Heritage Foundation, St. Albert Senior Center, and the Affordable Housing Advisory Board in association with the Planning Department. Community Services and Recreation and Parks are two departments funded through this function. Community Services provides arts, culture, and preventative social services to foster a community-wide foster a community where residents feel included, valued, safe, supported, and connected. By working collaboratively with individuals, families, organizations, and schools, they facilitate creative solutions, artistic experiences, and offer opportunities that engage, empower, strengthen, and enrich the well-being of our residents. Recreation and Parks plays a key role in helping citizens of St. Albert achieve physical and mental health, well-being, and to nourish through both personal and community development. Our most recent community satisfaction survey, St. Albert parks, trails, and natural areas are cited by 60% of residents as a top factor contributing to a high quality of life. Recreation, such as access to fitness, facilities, and youth and family programming came in a strong second at 44%. Slide. In order to fund these important services, this slide shows an overall impact for the 23 projected budget as compared to the 22 revised budget. The net impact is an increase in $33,000 that's impact to taxes and is mainly a result of slower COVID revenue recovery and partial year closure of Fountain Park Pool. On the revenue side, $693,000 decrease in sales and user fees due to decrease in memberships sold from slower post-COVID recovery and partial year closure of Fountain Park Pool. $104,000 decrease in other revenues due to decrease in number of signed contracts for advertising and sponsorship. $124,000 decrease in transfers from reserve due to one-time 22 funding for projects such as Walk Walk Dance Temporary Art and consultant costs for fee review expenses. $810,000 decrease in salaries, wages, and benefits due to transfer of marketing staff to moving strategic services and communication, and to partial year closure of Fountain Park Pool, offset by annualization of salary costs. $139,000 decrease in materials, goods, supplies, and utilities due to a partial year closure of Fountain Park Pool. Next slide. A council request was made to bring forward information regarding hosting Alberta level games in 2027 or 2028 and the budget required to develop bids for these events. In alignment with council direction, we provided 2 business cases for consideration of council and is intended that council make motions to advance their preference of one of these 2 options. Submitting a bid for the Alberta 55+ Summer Games in 2027 will cost $10,000 and be targeted for late 2024. If selected, the overall cost of hosting these games is estimated at $50,000. As a smaller event, Alberta 55+ games are projected to have smaller net economic impacts and lower returns on community reputation and well-being when compared to the general Alberta Summer Games, but they do have a larger estimated economic impact in relations to municipal contribution required. A bid for the Alberta Summer Games in 2028 will be targeted for late 2025. The budget request for $20,000 for this initiative would not come from the 23 budget, but the 2024 budget if approved. The Alberta Games are larger in scale than the Alberta 55 Games and are projected to have a larger community reputation, well-being, and net economic impacts and require greater investment. If selected, hosting cost to the city are estimated at $955,000. It's important to note that these business cases are currently unfunded and have not been included in the proposed budget. Should council directed administration to include one of these options, the impact of taxes increase will need to be accepted or other items would have to be reprioritized or unfunded. Next slide. The following capital charters are recommended for community and recreation services. Oakmont Trail Phase 2 includes completion of the construction of a new trail linkage from the southern edge of the Oakmont neighborhood to the existing Red Willow Trail system on the north side of the Sturgeon River. The budget for this charter is $687,800. Millennium Park Design Phase 2 in construction is a project that aligns with strategic priorities of downtown vibrancy. This stage of the Millennium Park project will build on the conceptual design completed in 2019. It includes detailed design and construction of the community building, park amenities and trails, and a 4-season water feature ice surface. For 2023, detailed design for the servicing and landscaping of the park is proposed and is estimated to cost $337,000. Through the Youth Transitional Housing Project, we will undertake a feasibility study that includes cost estimates, building requirements, location options, plan development, and implementing collaborative partnerships to support a youth transitional home in St. Albert. The budget for this work is $132,300. Next slide. In summary, for 2023, Community and Recreation Services are proposing an overall net increase of $33,000 as departments work towards continued post-pandemic recovery work and partial closure of Fountain Park Recreation Center impacts the budget. So that concludes the recreation and community services functional area, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hiltz. Any questions? Councillor Bermansky, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. Just one question regarding the plan for the Millennium Park, the DART for 337,000. Would that be a plan identical to the presentation that we saw? And there wouldn't be any changes or public input to it prior to that?
Yes, and I would take that question and turn it over to Dan Podupley.
Through the chair to Councillor Bermansky. So we would advance the planning on the project, and I have Manda Wild online. She can speak to the details of our process through the next phase of development of that park.
Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair to Councillor Bermansky, the $337,000 will allow us to complete some servicing studies that are required to make sure that the servicing downtown can manage the planned improvements to the park, as well as landscaping design that will allow the park to be improved in the short term and be more functional for the existing uses that we see downtown and get us in good set for the future development of the site. We would plan to do some preliminary engagement with the public to confirm the program for the site as part of our regular detailed design process. And we would engage the public again at future phases when it comes to the building and those types of design works as well.
Okay, so the detailed design would be the detailed design of the, I guess, pre-design that we saw, the same idea, but not changing anything in the big picture.
Yeah, correct. We'll start with the concept plan that was completed as the base for the detailed planning, and then make modifications based on public engagement or further engagement with council or executive leadership. We don't anticipate any large changes at this point, but we do engage in honest and transparent public engagement where the public is able to influence that design. So as much as that is our guide, we will work with the public and our stakeholders to ensure that that design is still relevant in today's context.
Okay, thank you. And the other question on the youth transitional housing, I guess it's just another research paper. So we're in kind of a time right now where the 132,000, I just have a question if there'll be other outside agencies that are helping youth, like right on the ground right now, that would be, you know, requesting those funds as well.
Yes, I'd like to pass that question over to Elizabeth.
Through the chair to Councillor Bermansky. While there might be organizations that are supporting the youth, there's no organization right now that is doing the work that a youth transitional housing would be providing within our community. So part of this feasibility study is talking to all those organizations, but it's the tool that leverages our ability to access funds from both the provincial and federal government. So it's sort of that lever to get that funds that would also include that participation from the other organizations. And I'll ask Council Connie Smigelski to just add if there's anything I may have missed there.
No, and thank you for the question. Nothing that you've missed, just that absolutely we have agencies supporting youth, but we don't have any ability to support housing for our youth in our community to date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bermansky, Councillor Hughes, and then Mayor Herron.
I don't mind if Mayor Herron wants to go first.
Pardon me?
I don't mind if she wants to go first, because I've hogged the floor so much. But
Mayor Herron, over to you then.
Not very well.
We're having difficulty hearing you, Mayor Herron. She's gonna phone. Okay, fair enough. Go for it, then Councillor Hughes, and then we'll get to
okay,
you.
so yeah, while she gets set up, that's awesome. Okay, so the Oakmont Trail Phase 2, my understanding is we've already had some public consultation. So I'm just wondering where the budget for that came from. Did we approve that? And I don't remember it.
Yes, no.
To do the initial stages for the Phase 2?
Yes, I'll pass that to Recreation Parks to Danielle.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, we have started public engagement on that project as we finish design on the remaining phases of that construction. That was part of the project that was in place and funded through 2022 capital projects. And we are now putting in an alignment with completion of that for the next phasing of actual construction. So that was part of that initial phase of design that was already funded by council.
Okay, so when I look at the total distance, it looks like it's around 2,000 meters, 2003 approximately. So, and it coming in at a cost of over 350 a meter to build it. Is that a normal costing? It may not be you, it might be need to go to engineering, I don't know, but that just seems high to build it, especially considering that we've already got gravel in several sections.
I'm going to ask, through the chair to Councillor Hughes, I'm going to ask Amanda Wild to give some more context to the cost of the trail development.
Certainly, through the chair, and I'll give an initial response, but if engineering wants to jump in as well, I'd welcome their support as well. That is a very typical cost. A 3-meter trail is typically about $225 per square meter just for the trail itself, give or take. And then in this particular segment, in segment 1, there's opportunity to significantly increase the tree canopy through naturalization of the edges, which does require us to come in and remove some of the existing gravel road and replant, as well as seeding nodes and garbage and things that aren't available in that alignment right now would be included in that cost.
Okay. And this goes past the second part of that. I just think it was Botanica, the second building that was discussed last year. Is there an impetus to do this now? I'm not sure about the need for this timing, because we've gone this long without it. So what's brought on the need to do this at this point?
Yeah, certainly. And again, I would invite my colleagues from engineering to respond as well. From Recreation and Parks perspective, we were asked in 2020 to assess the feasibility of the 3 segments of the Oakman Trail project, and we completed that. And then part of that project was to continue on with design. In particular, the timing for segment 1 is tied to the Northeast Servicing project. So segment 1 runs along Old Belrose Drive, and the Northeast Servicing project will need to come in and disturb that same area to complete some of their proposed alignments. So it makes sense for the upgrading of the trail to occur at the same time. So we go in as essentially one project, disturb that area once, bring it to public use and up to our standards, and we don't have to go in and disrupt work that has already been done under that servicing project. So that's the reason for the timing of segment 1.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm just going back to the actual financial information. And we're approving 2023. When we do this, are we approving the full 2.9 million though for the entire thing, or are we approving just 2023?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes and their finance colleagues can intercede as they need. But at this point, we're asking for approval on the first stage, which is 2023. So you'd only be granting approval on the 2023 budget.
Okay, so the cost of 687,000 and we only have 863 meters is almost $800 a meter to do that section. Like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that, because the entire cost is actually huge to do this area for 800 meters. Because you told me that the average is around 200 and 225, let's say 250, just for argument's sake. But we're coming in at almost 800 for this one section. So I understand you talked about the tree canopy and stuff. I need to wrap my head around how we're coming in at $550 more a square meter than, or is it square meter versus linear meter? So you're telling me it's actually $600 per linear meter?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, if you'd like more detail on that specific section of the project and the construction costs, we'd be happy to take that as a BIR.
Sure, I'll do that. Yeah, the Millennium Park design, as I go through this, I'm trying to figure out, I realize that there's technicalities. I'm just trying to figure out 337,000 when we have a pretty basic idea of what we're going to build already. How does it get up to $337,000?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes. Oh, sorry. I'm going to pass it along to Amanda Wild to provide some context to the costing.
Certainly, and again, I'd invite my engineering colleagues to support. The design costing estimates are based on a percentage of the projected construction costs, as well as the applicable contingency. So that's how you're seeing that 337. It's based on the projected phase 1 construction costs. Sorry, I believe it's listed as phase 2 for construction. And it's just a rule of thumb. And obviously we'd spend to what is required to complete the work and no more.
So like, let's say we do this and we don't move forward on it for like 4 years or 5 years because we are looking at budget crunches all over the place. And I just don't know if the residents will support an our tax increase for this. So if we were to do that now, you're saying you're basing it on construction costs, then I guess then what is if we do this now and it doesn't actually move forward for 4 years, my fear is we're going to do this and then we're going to have to redo it in 3 to 4 years because it will be considered outdated. So are we basically doing this with the intention to do this in the next 12 to 24 months after it's completed? Or are we confident this would have a shelf life that would endure in case it wasn't done for a full term, for example?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, I would say that our plan is to proceed with the design of the projects. And then I think the shelf life of the project would be have a lasting legacy for a few years that we would not have to redo that work in order to proceed with design. The costing though, may be the one part of that project that we would need to reassess as we move forward, depending on the length of time between the design and the construction, just with cost escalations and some of those changing realities on the construction market, that would be the one factor we may have to do some rework on, would be the costing.
Okay. And for the youth transitional housing, when I look at and maybe I'm missing something, so if I am, forgive me, but when I look at the growth chart, it just has the cost for this design, but there's nothing else listed in following years. So I guess, can you just share why we're not estimating anything in the following years after this, after the initial study and design and report?
I'll take that through the chair to Councillor Hughes. We really recognize that the municipality is likely not in the business of operating a transitional shelter, and we don't really know all of the permutations and models that could be considered to make this work. We recognize that it might involve capital, it might not. There might be something very suitable in our community. So really what we wanted to get to was, what are the potential modes? Who are the partners, so that we can start to have the conversations with the federal government and the provincial government. And hopefully most of the money comes from there.
And what about operating though? Are we looking at, and all these are going to be discussed in this $132,000 report? Is figuring out how we're going to cover the operating costs as well?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, if there was considerations for operating costs from the city, yes, it would be covered within that feasibility study. From our vantage point within our existing operations and how we currently support all of our other organizations and our residents as well, we believe it would happen within our current operating contingency.
Okay. Because when I think back, we had a report and it basically it said we'd like, have a youth transition shelter and recommend as the city pays for it. So this, if I'm reading this correctly, it's more of a follow-up to see if there's other alternatives to just having the city pay for it. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then from there, we'll figure out if it's even remotely an option.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. The other question I had is, you had the 411,000. Now I realize that everything we do for one-time funding is dangerous because we're just raising the tax rates for next year. And I'm looking forward to that BIR when it comes forward. But we have the $411,000 savings because we're going to have it closed for half a year. But the subsidy for Fountain Park is at least 1.4, if it's not 1.7 million a year. So why is it not half of the costs that would cost to run the pool for the savings?
So I'll turn that question over to Danielle,
Sure.
and then she can start that, and then she may bring in some other people to comment.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Through the chair to Councillor Hughes. So the reduction in the costs on Fountain Park it's not an equal split where you can just take the year and split in half the costs. We have permanent staff that are managing other projects or that have been redeployed to other tasks within the organization or their departments. So they have maintained their kind of existing service. We have some components of the operational costs on materials and infrastructure that we continue to do to complete as a part of the Fountain Park project, as well as we have utilities that we're still paying on that facility. So there's a number of pieces that are still in action. And then we also have to bring staff back earlier we plan to reopen in the summer, but we'll need staff on earlier to prepare the space, to bring the space back up, to hire, to recruit, to train on the new systems. So it's not an equal split of just half.
That makes sense. I haven't looked recently. Well, because there's a giant barricade all around the building, to be fair, but did we drain the pool or did we just cover the pool?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, it is drained because we're doing work in the natatorium. So all of the space had to be closed down and the pool had to be drained and it's empty.
So at least we don't have to pay for the utilities in the pool, although we could have just let it get very, very cold, but we'd have to pay to fill the whole pool up again.
Correct. And that is because we had to take the tile out from inside of the pool basin. We're doing work on anti-entrapment devices. There's a number of components of work that we're doing actually on the pool basin. So it required us to drain the pool.
Okay. I had one more thing, and then I'm done. Okay. So we have the two bids, and I know we've discussed this ad nauseum. And I know we have a motion for the 55 games, Councillor Jolly, and I like that one, just, so good. But if we were to actually put bids on both of them, we have to run the risk of winning both bids, right? So we really do have to choose our favorite son and give him the money to college.
Well, through the chair to Councillor Hughes, it'd be recommended just to pick one because it would, the resources required to bid on both could become quite significant, and they have to be volunteer organization driven forward as well. So it's putting a lot of strain on our volunteers plus our staff. So it'd be recommended that that council picks one, and that would be the direction we would take.
So, and the 55 games plus, I'm assuming, so I'm going to ask you, because I've learned to stop assuming anything, is it would be less onerous on staff to handle both the bidding and the managing of it if we were successful, right? Because I'm just looking at just our capacity.
Yes, that is correct, because it probably has about 10 to 20% of the athletes involved and also events.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Mayor Herron, over to you now.
I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I actually texted Ken.
Still can't hear you, Mayor Herron.
Councillor Mackay has her questions.
Okay, go for it, Councillor Mackay.
Hang on. I gotta go to the teleprompter here.
Well, that font's like 24 font. It should be okay.
Mayor's texted me the question. She just said, what would the cost be just to fund section 3 of the Oakmont Trail? Rather than go for it in the sequence that is currently there, because we already have an existing dirt road, even though it could take advantages of some of the northeast servicing. But what happens if we did it in the reverse order?
I will turn that over to Danielle, but that may have to be BIR.
Thanks, Mr. Hiltz. Through the chair to Councillor Mackay or Mayor Herron. We can do some quick math on that if you give us just a second. So Amanda Wild is working on that right now. But one thing we wanted to note is that we do start that project in line with the Northeast servicing. And I'm not sure, Donnie, if in the interim while we're doing some quick math, if you have any comments, Ms. George, on that portion on not doing the trail work on that phase first.
Through the chair to Councillor Mackay / Mayor Herron, I still need some time to pick up the map unless Tim online, our capital project manager, may have something to share at present.
Why don't we just put it in as a BIR, and then that way then we can actually have a little bit more detail, and we're not rushing. I just have another question in relation to the youth transitional housing, and it's tied to a question that Mayor Herron had, but also one that I can echo. I guess my first question is this, when we were looking at the operating business case around the youth transitional housing, and you've identified it in the backgrounder, there was also the social housing specialist that was identified and approved and is now working. Is there no capacity for that individual? And I can understand, but I figured we better ask. Is there no capacity for that individual to be able to conduct what we're asking for from a contractor, or is that just not possible?
And through the chair, I'll pass it over to Elizabeth.
Through the chair, thank you so much for that question. The role of the social housing specialist currently is a vacant role as we wait for the approval of this feasibility study, and we have the person in another term role at the moment. But a lot of that work is around supporting all of the housing that happens and work through planning development as well. It's not entirely focused on the youth transitional component. There's quite a bit of work and subject matter expertise that comes from just understanding the current methodologies that are being used across the country as well. So we want to just, be really conscious that it's going to take quite a bit of work in a very short term, that it's outside of our internal operations, that we have that internal position that can support getting to the right people at the right time, but also continue moving forward all of the other housing work that they will be supporting. And then I'll just ask if Connie Smigelski has anything else to add, or our senior manager.
Thank you again for the question, and I don't have anything further to add. Thank you.
Okay, so so right now, we don't actually have an individual in the special housing specialist role. We have used that over to something else, and I'm just thinking, I guess, so that was just an organizational need or an organizational decision, because I thought that was what the purpose of that individual was.
Through the chair, absolutely, that is the purpose of that position. With the feasibility study being unapproved, it just meant that we had operational space. And so currently our housing specialist is in our term manager role for FCSS supports.
Okay, I mean, that's an operational decision, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, there's that opportunity, that position's there. So I'll probably have some additional questions in relation to that, but probably not today. So were we also looking at an outside agency, looking at kind of coming in, scanning whether or not they could operate a youth transitional housing, like a third-party provider, other nonprofit, like I mean, I'm just picking names out here, like Yes Society, weren't they approached, or is that still a possibility, or is that now done?
Yes, we did. We did. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Oh, I was just going to say, I can see Connie nodding, so I'm hoping that she will take your question.
Thank you, through the chair, to Councillor Mackay. Yes was at one time an organization that may have been interested. They have since gotten back to us to let us know that it's not something within their capacity, and they are in fact doing a review of the model that they have. So they said that we could certainly go to them for questions and opportunities to partner, but they're not at all interested or capable or able to take that on in St. Albert.
Okay, and then the follow-up question, if I can just direct it directly to Connie, then just from everything that we're seeing since we've actually pulled together the Mayor's Task Force on Homelessness that did identify this as a priority in our community. Does this still remain a priority in our community?
Absolutely, it does. And the numbers do continue to increase. When we look at the numbers that we collect for homelessness in the community, our youth are actually our second highest numbers. And as the community grows, those numbers will increase. And unfortunately, as we know, episodically, if a youth is in need of housing at 13, 14, 15, 16, it's going to become a chronic housing issue. And so the sooner we can support those young people, get them the services they need, and hopefully move away from that chronic homelessness. I mean, in terms of social return on investment, we are saving money down the road.
All right, thanks. And then I guess what I'm going to do is I'll put in a BIR in relation to the social housing specialists. And I just need some more clarity on that.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Just so that everybody knows, what I've been instructed by Mr. Fletcher is that at the end of all of our presentations, we will have an open bear pit session, if you will, for any questions that have come up throughout our budget presentation. So if you don't have a question tonight, It's not your only opportunity to ask questions in this regard. So Mayor Hearn, did Councillor Mackay represent you well? All right, you got a thumbs up there, Councillor Mackay. Oh, Councillor Bermansky, go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. Just one quick question, if Connie could answer for me, please. The background that was provided regarding youth homelessness was 2019 was last updated. Do we have more current information than that would be available to us?
Yes, thank you through the chair to Councillor Romansky. We do have updated numbers. I do have them. I believe it was 18 was last year, and I could certainly take it as a BR and get the correct numbers. I'm going by memory.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bermansky. Online, Councillor Jolly, Mayor Heron, any further? All right, thank you. Over to you again. Sorry, one more, Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out this youth transitional housing. So the person who was in youth transitional, or we had a spot vacant and we're using that for the term director. And I'm assuming it's just because all the other, there's a bunch of people who are acting right now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so once all the actings are no longer actings, then we're planning to fill that position?
Yes.
Okay, so this was an intentional, it wasn't just that we couldn't find a person to go there, we just decided to reallocate that money to handle the situation at the time.
That's correct. There was I don't want to say relative priority, but the management function, given the lack of the study that was done or is to be done, meant that money was better used in the short term.
Okay, so now this is my mind's all scrolled up right now because all the actings, like the people who had the acting, everybody moved up, and then we have the two assistants. But then the cost for the two assistants are the only real new costs. And that we're seeing is being paid for from the attrition vacancy pool. So why would we need to reallocate the money for the term position if the only money we required was for the additional two positions, which were paid for from the vacancy pool? Is this considered this is part of the vacancy pool situation?
For all intents and purposes, that's correct. A number of those positions with the unfilled positions are really part of the rolling vacancy pool that we use to fill those terms, or whether it be short term or emergent issues. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, I think I got it cleared up my brain now. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Fletcher, over to you for the next division.
Thank you very much. You're going to get a double dose of me on Monday. Carrie Hilt is going to provide the emergency services briefing today to spare you that.
Thank you, Chairperson and members of council. We will now look at the emergency services plan and budget for today. Emergency services function area provides external services in the area of fire and policing. The function is responsible for the delivery of essential programs and services that ensure the overall safety and security of our residents. The presentation focuses on city-run emergency services only. When residents were asked to indicate the extent in which they feel safe and secure in their community, more than 90% of St. Albertans feel safe or very safe. This is in large part due to the services provided in this function. Fire services is ready to respond to any emergency 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The department responds quickly and effectively to suppress fires and provide medical and rescue attention in disasters and other emergency situations. In addition, they specialize in services that include ice water rescue and dangerous good intervention. The department assists the community with service calls concerning items such as fire pits and carbon monoxide and smoke detector activations. Fire services also educates the community groups and schools on fire prevention. Municipal enforcement. Our peace officers enforce the Alberta Traffic Safety Act and transportation of dangerous goods legislation. They are also responsible for enforcing various other municipal bylaws and provincial statutes such as the Animal and Community Standards Bylaw and portions of the Gaming and Liquor Act and Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act, to name a few. This function is also responsible for ensuring the city is prepared for emergencies that may happen at any time. We have comprehensive emergency management plans and programs in place in order to prepare for, respond to, and recover from all potential hazards, including natural disasters, technological, and human-caused incidents. Next slide, please. This slide shows the overall impact for the 2023 projected budget as compared to the 22 revised budget. The net impact is an increase of 828,000. Impact to taxes is mainly due to revenues, 602,000 decrease in fines due to lower trends in photo radar, 368,000 increase in conditional grants due to new funding models for the 911 grant. The remaining 140,000 is made up of smaller revenue items. Under expenses, 136,000 decrease in salary and wages due to a higher mix of probationary and staff compared to prior years. 173,000 decrease in contract and general services due to the reduction of photo radar contract due to less fines. 800,000 increase in the purchase of other government due to the increase in our RCMP contract. 112,000 increase in materials, goods, supplies, and utilities due to an increase of cost of uniforms, equipment, and utilities. 160,000 increase in other expenditures due to increase in equipment charges for emergency services. This would be the charge back to public operations for maintenance of our vehicles and fuel services. Next slide. Emergency Services is proposing 2 operating business cases. Enhanced department training will cost $22,000, is required because our integrated service makes it difficult to hire employees certified in both emergency medical and firefighting services. As it's easier to recruit advanced care paramedics, this training will ensure our new recruits have the essential firefighting skills they need. 4 firefighters budgeted at $429,000 in 2023 are included in this year's budget to continue the staggered hiring of employees required to staff the new fire hall number 4 when it is built. Continuing to onboard new staff now allows the opportunity for training and department familiarization prior to the new station opening, as well as spreading the cost over several years. There are no capital charters requested for this function area. Next slide, please. In summary, for 2023, Emergency Services is proposing an overall net increase of approximately $828,000 over 2022. Key influences are primarily related to a decrease in fine revenue, an increase per member rate in the RCMP contracts, including retroactive pay and equipment charges for emergency services vehicles. This concludes my emergency services presentation, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hiltz. Questions? Councillor Mackay, then Councillor Hughes, and then Councillor Bermansky.
Look at that. I unplugged the gates there by getting him on first.
There you go.
Mine's a kind of a twofold. What if, first of all, in relation to the changes in the Emergency Management Act that required now municipalities now to be on the hook for potentially 10% of all costs, where would that be shown or in our budget? Would that be in emergency services or would that be in risk, Matt? Where would that be?
So we currently don't have anything but sort of budgeted for that. We're in finances in the process. One of our projects is working on a reserve review. And so that's one of the components that we're looking at is how would we potentially fund that type of a disaster, where it lined up in the city budget. Ultimately won't really matter in the end. We would decide where it makes most sense if it's in the risk area or right in emergency services. But it is something that we're looking how we would handle that type of an expense.
Yeah, no, I was just more of a curiosity in the sense, and thank you for my BIR response in relation to the training. I appreciated a little bit more of a breakdown as to what that is, because I don't think majority of residents understand the fact that when we hire for an integrated firefighter, we can't find a firefighter and train them to paramedic standards. We have to find a paramedic and train them to firefighter standards. I'm not sure what that says, but as an old cop, I could have fun with that. Anyways, but I guess what I would the costs of the RCMP contract. I mean, now that's included in some of the increase this year in relation to the actual salary costs in relation to the negotiated contract?
That is correct.
Do we have a final number as to what that is?
I'll pass that over to Mr. Cook. If not, then Anne may provide some additional information.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Hiltz. Actually, I'm going to ask Aaron Giesbrecht to provide a comment on that for us with regards to those contract dollars. Aaron.
Thank you for the question. I don't have an exact number available today. What I can share is that, and this is on average at a high level, the new costs per RCMP member, when you look at including vehicles, salaries, operating costs, is around $208,000 per member. Now that's with the salary increases that they have. If we want to break down something further for you, Counselor, I'd have to take that as a BIR and make sure I get the exact correct numbers for you.
No, I was just trying to see if we actually had an actual number in relation to how that impacted our finances in relation to our overall budget. And so, I mean, I think your response is adequate. The only other comment I have, and while I have Mr. Giesbrecht on huge screen in this auditorium here, you're massive. Is that in the past we've looked at having actual project charters that identified a need for more MES personnel. And I mean, the task has not gotten any simpler. As a matter of fact, I would put it forward that it's actually gotten more complex. Our demands that council and our residents have put on our MES have only increased. Have we not looked at adding additional resources into our MES, or did just not get over the line in relation to our budget prioritization matrix?
I think given the situation that the city was in relation to finances, it wasn't put forward as a business case to council for additional MES officers. We've been vacant not vacant. There's been a few vacancies over the last couple of years due to COVID and a couple of other transitions. And just recently, we're pretty much back up to 100% strength, meaning we have 10 full-time MES officers, uniformed officers that are frontline service delivery, and then we have one sergeant who oversees them. So that's 11 MES/community peace officers. I think once we have a good run in these next 6 months with a full contingency of staff, we might be in a little bit of a better situation to evaluate with executive leadership as to business cases for the future. Depending on where we're at with finances and overall priorities for the community.
Very, very safe answer. Good job. I appreciate it. Anyways, that's my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And the
Councillor
mayor was asking about a bio break. I don't know why she would need a bio break.
Okay, fair enough. We can take 5. Why don't we take a 5-minute bio break for everybody, and then we'll come back and finish up questions, and then we'll recess. It's all good. Yeah, me too. Good. All right, good afternoon again. Welcome back. We'll reconvene now, and Councillor Hughes, you're up for questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the firefighter FTEs, we're asking for 4. I saw that we didn't ask for any last year. It felt like I did ask for some last year, just to be fair. But it was the 2 years prior. So we have 17 right now, and we're asking for 4. Why are we asking for 4 now if we're not planning to have it open before 2025?
Okay, I'll have Mr. Cook address that question.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Hiltz, and through the chair to Councillor Hughes. The purpose for stretching out our staff or the request for new firefighters for Station 4 is to help, one, meet our training goals, our recruitment needs, as identified in the 1 BIR that was posted yesterday in regards to our training dollars request. Integrated services currently are challenged with hiring qualified individuals. So by spacing out our needs for this year, planned for the following year, and then again another 7 in the future potentially, what we're doing is we're able to capture quality individuals now rather than going to the market for 15 at one time, which may not be available. Also, to accompany that as well is the fact that this gives us the opportunity to take these individuals, train them up to speed, allow them to progress through their different training and to learn the various skill sets needed before we bring on another number of recruits. So that way we're not over inundated with brand new recruits. At the same time, we're able to ease them into the system and giving them the necessary skills to do a job independently of one another.
Okay, but how long does it take to train somebody from the time you hire them to the time that they're good to go? How long are we looking at here?
Our current recruitment program that all new recruits go through is 16 weeks. As we take on new recruits that are not trained to an NFPA 1001 level 2 standard, there is an additional timeline. We are challenged by the opportunity for us to rent and to get into a live fire training center. Typically, that's the City of Edmonton. We do not have our own. And so at times we are at the mercy of that training center to when we can get our crews in or our staff in to complete, 1, learning the necessary skills, 2, being evaluated and graded on the skills that they have obtained through those live fire evolutions.
So I understand we've been staggering it so that we don't have to hit taxpayers the bill of 20, was it 27 or a lot? Yeah, 27, I guess, or 28 firefighters all at once. I get that. And also it's difficult to hire that many. But when we first did this and we started hiring early, it was because we were intending for 2023 opening. Now we're looking at 2025 opening. I'm wondering, is there any harm of actually just delaying this or hiring less than 4 for 2023, considering that this is, you're telling me basically 16 weeks is 4 months, including additional training, let's double it, like 8 months, they're good to go. So is there an actual need to do it at this time, or can we reduce that number right now?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, no, good question, and thank you for that. The one thing that isn't identified in the business case for these new firefighters is the actual time for recruitment. And when we start to post for recruitment, so on approval of the request of these 4 firefighters, it will take us approximately 5 to 6 months to actually get these folks in the door to begin their training process. So in addition to the time that it takes for us to put them through a 16-week training program, coupled of course with any delays that we encounter with renting a live fire training facility, we need to tack another 6 months, approximately another 6 months onto that timeline. That's why the request is before you now. And again, that allows us to stretch out the number of new recruits or green hands, if you will, that are actually on the floor at any given time.
Okay, so do they get paid the same salary as a recruit as they are when they're fully trained? Because most places I know they get paid incrementally as they complete the course.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, our under the collective agreement that we have with the IAFF, when a new recruit comes onto the fire service, they're paid as a recruit firefighter. Over time and as their training progresses, they then move up the ranks to a 3rd, 2nd, or 1st class firefighter. At which time, when they reach 1st class, they will maintain that position and that rate of pay until such time as they're promoted up to a lieutenant, for example. So to your question, they are paid as a recruit firefighter for a period of 1 year when they're brought on board.
So can I look at the proposed budget for 2023? You're asking for 429. For 2024, it's 437.4. So what I'm looking at is that we have the opportunity to reflect the fact that the first 6 months are not going to be on the books for next year, best case scenario. And that the recruitment for the next 6 months will be less than what would be in 2024. So I guess I'm going to be asking for a BIR to reflect the actual costs of what's going to come in down the road for 2023, because it sounds like we don't need to go up to 429 to accomplish the goal of still hiring for this year. Am I misreading anything here?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, the numbers that are presented in front of you are based on an April 1st start date for all of our new recruits as well. And I may be corrected by my friends in finance, but the adjustments between 2023 and 2024 are reflective of cost of living adjustments. And I may ask Diane McMorty just to confirm that point for me.
Okay, but it's still, even so, we're looking at a full year salary here. And not, and you're telling me that it's going to take 6 months to hire, not 3. And you told me that recruits are getting paid less. So the 429 is not reflective of everything we just heard.
The 429 is reflective of the rate of pay for which these individuals will receive, and it is reflective of an April 1st start date.
Okay.
We can go back and double check, but I also believe there's also other one-time costs that will hit 23 when you bring on new recruits as well that are in that total. So we can go back and just double check how it was built up to that 400,000 mark.
Okay, well, I'll put either BIR or PM just to solve the problem and just to have those numbers reflected, because whatever it is in 2024, we can deal with that problem when we get to it. When I looked at the Public Works 001 BIR, I appreciate that. One of the things it says is replacing a fire truck. So I'm just wondering, which fire truck are we replacing?
Yeah, I'll have Mr. Cook answer that question.
So thank you, Mr. Hill. Through the chair to Councillor Hughes. The apparatus that is currently being replaced is a unit that's at the 20-year mark, which is the replacement age through the National Fire Protection Association, through the industry standards for a fire apparatus to one, either be replaced, or two, to be overhauled. The apparatus committee that we have is currently working on updating, or pardon me, creating that RFP for us right now. And it is a planned replacement here in the near future.
So if we were to keep it and overhaul it, we have no idea what the cost would be on that as an alternative, do we? I'm not asking which one to do. I'm just wondering if you've looked into it.
No, we do not have those costs. I do not also have that timeline. As currently right now, build times for fire apparatus are in excess of 14 months. Some apparatus, the build times are even stretched out longer. That depends on the type of apparatus, of course. I would have to confirm these details, but trends across the industry show that rebuilding a fire apparatus falls within those same timelines as well.
Well, I have you on the screen. So one of the things we have in here is the training, the cross training. And I understand we had the BIR, I read it, so I get that. One of the things I'm just wondering is when we hire, I know we're hiring paramedics and then train them to be firefighters because it's difficult to go the other way around. Do we also put as a stipulation that they have to pass the firefighter physical before they are hired, or do we deal with that after the fact?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, that is a condition of employment. Yes, they must pass the physical assessment.
Okay. Perfect. And that is why Ken is out. That, and because also a lack of hair might distract people and then they just get too excited. Okay, that was a different thing there. I think I'll leave it for now and I'll come back if the questions aren't answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Killick.
Thank you. Are we on track for the fire station number 4 to actually be operational by 2025?
And through the chair to Councillor Hughes, we'll be bringing forward to the standing committee of the whole on mid-November, a update on that project charter. And I'll pass it over to Everett to add some additional information.
Thank you, Mr. Hiltz. Through the chair to Councillor Killick, yes, as Mr. Hiltz said, we will be coming to the standing committee of the whole mid-November with an update on the project charter, specifically around Station 4. Included in that charter will be an update on the building, staffing, and as well as the servicing of the land. I believe that will be delivered on November 15th.
Okay, the reason my question was, as we continue to hire and have these people on staff before they're actually got a fire station to work at, we seem to be staffing up. But I want to make sure the staff lines up with the actual opening of when we need them at the new fire station. The other related question, with these new firefighters that we brought on board, have they been able to eliminate our need for overtime and any overtime that might have been required to backfill for staff members that are off on leave, long-term leave? Are they serving a dual purpose while they're waiting for the station to open?
Through the chair to Councillor Killick, excellent question, and thank you for it. The short answer is yes. These recruits, as they come on board, these new members do assist with covering off some of our overtime needs. However, overtime needs are also dependent on skill sets. So I need to caution council with that, as although my statement is yes, this does address our overtime needs, there are cases where if we need to fill a position and their skill level needs to be a pump operator, for example, some of our new recruits won't have that skill set. So we will still have to pay some overtime to cover off that shift. So there are many cases where, yes, it does address overtime needs. There are still cases where it does not. I just want to be clear with that answer.
And my last question, I guess, is do we have any retention clause, like after we train them and get them their skill set up, they're a pretty valuable commodity. They could leave and go to any municipality. In particular, if we're not keeping the new recruits busy because they're basically waiting for a new station to come on board. Do we have some mechanism to make sure we retain that those new members till when we really need them when Station 4 is open?
So through the chair to Councillor Killick, again, thank you for the question. Currently, right now, our new members that come on that are being brought on specifically to fill our needs for Station 4. While they're on shift, not only are we responding to calls and getting into the system and the business of how we do things, they're also training as well. So while staff are on shift, all staff stay very busy, as we do have a number of skills that staff need to maintain proficiency in and competency in to ensure our service delivery. In addition to that, I do also want to add that the fire service is somewhat of a revolving door. There are times where we have applicants who come to us from another service. So they come with the skills necessary at higher levels of training, both in medical and fire skills. So even if we do lose a member to another department, often we'll see a return on our investment through another member joining our service. I don't have numbers to back that up, but that is a reality of the fire service today.
And just while I have you, I think all residents would say thank you for your service, especially in the recent week of up at Kingswood. So I just take a bit of time to say that.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Okay, just got a couple more here. A couple of things just on the debt. So I don't know if it's going to be you or it's going to be finance. I don't hope, and you didn't go away, Anne, I hope. On the debt payments for Fire Hall 4 and police building, I'm assuming that the debt payments for Fire Hall 4 are reflective of the current expected costs, right? Because I know that there's going to be something, you said there's something coming forward in the next week. So that's reflected of the current expected costs, not of the potential cost of whatever comes forward next week, correct?
I believe that is correct, but I will have Anne come on and address that question.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, you are correct. Actually, right now, we don't have any of the debt impacts other than the piece of equipment in the 223 budgets and the land already in the past. So we don't have any of the forecasting. We have the borrowing Bible, but not the tax impacts to the interest and principal built in yet.
Because it says 901, I guess it's thousands, right? In 2022 for Fire Hall 4 and 969 for the upcoming year.
So I can answer, let me just double check the fire hall land purchase. I think the impact of that was in the 22 budget. The 23 budget has the impact of the interest and principal on the purchase of equipment.
Okay, that helps us. And the police building, I'm assuming that the debt payment is on 5 million and not on the total borrowing bylaw, right? Because we had the approved budget was 5 million, but the borrowing bylaw was for 7.5. So is the debt payment based on the budget or the worst case scenario?
And the police building itself is not in the 23 budget. That will be forecast in the 24 budget.
Yeah, but is it based on 5 million or 7.5?
That's
Borrowing.
built on 5 million.
Perfect. Okay. And then the last question I have for now, unless I think of some more, you lucky people, is, okay, so if I go to page 78 of the budget, you guys have your summary of your document. And under the fines, it says, like, I understand we're saying it's going down because we're estimating 600,000 less this year. But I don't understand why it went up this year, because it says like 1.6, 2.1, 2.7, and then down to 1.1 again. So what happened this year and why are we estimating it for less for next year again?
So I'll have Chief Cook address that through Aaron.
And if Aaron, if you're able to take that for us.
Yeah, I thank you for the question. I think for this one, I think we should take a BIR just to make sure that I have the exact numbers that you're referring to, Councillor Hughes, and that we give you the exact correct information. I'm just reluctant to provide that ad hoc here.
Okay. I think I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Any other further questions online? Mayor Herron, Councillor Jolly, any questions? Seeing none there, I'm looking around the room. All right, going back to our agenda then. And given that it's past 4 o'clock, we're going to recess. However, the agenda says new budget information requests and postponed motions. If any of those happen, you can enter them in, or you can read them in now if you wish, or you can send them in through the process. Okay, so we'll send them in via electronic means then. Any other comments then before we recess? Okay, we have Councillor Hughes, one last question.
I have one more question and it's kind of bouncing back. I didn't want to go in the middle of it. When I looked at the growth plan for rec and services, we have Founders Walk but we have the 2023 approved growth plan. But then Founders Walk is listed at 2024 and nothing planned for 2023. So why is it in the 2023 recommended growth plan? Are we approving it for 2024 doing it this way? Because we typically work with 1 year at a time. So why is it slotted in there at this time is my question.
I'll have Danielle or Anne address that question.
That's a great question. Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, that's a great question. And I think that was just maybe included in air. So that was shown in the recommended, because you're right, it's only the 223 that we are recommending.
Okay, so we're just, this is more like a heads up thing, but we're not de facto recommending 2024. And the same thing for the transit buses. I believe that that's listed 2024 and it says 250,000 or something under transit. And there's nothing for 2023. So those two we should just kind of pluck out. Is that correct?
That is correct. I think we've given a kind of a rough estimate of the plans and the prioritizations, but you are correct. We're only recommending the funding for the 23. So that's something we'll take into consideration. Unless Diane has anything to add.
Yeah, I'll maybe just add that as part of our capital prioritization process, we go through and we score each of the projects. And what would have happened is those ones would have had a higher score. So even though they're not until later in the plan, because they still fall in that where the line cut off at the number, it's showing in there, but you're definitely not de facto approving 2024 until we get to multi-year budgeting, which is of course the plan. But for right now, you are just approving the ones that show in 2023, but it's to give you a sense of likely what the 2024 recommended is going to look like based on the current prioritization.
Okay, thank you for that, because I've got that, and please forgive me because I've already forgotten. But when I looked at the trail for Oakmont and I asked you guys and I forgot the answer, is when we're approving the project for Oakmont, are we de facto at this moment approving all three if we approve the project charter as is? Or are we only approving phase one? Is it just phase one and you're going to come back with a separate project charter for phase 2 and 3? Is that just so that I have it clear in my brain because it's gone?
So I'll have Danielle address that question.
Yeah, I know she did. I just forgot. So please
Thanks,
forgive me.
Mr. Hiltz. Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, you're correct. We're only funding the phase one. So if approved, the charter will only fund the first phase of construction. The next phases come in future budget considerations for council.
Okay, and so if we didn't, I realize that there's reasons for your phase one, but council has the option of saying we want to do phase 2 or phase 3 right now as well, instead of phase 1, right? If that was, or is it not? Is it like phase 1 or bust right now? Does it have to be done in the order that's being recommended?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes. So the reason for the recommendation of the order is phase 1 aligns to the Northeast Servicing Project as mentioned earlier. Phase 2 and 3 will align to other projects that are coming forward in the future. So aligning to the Riverbank Landing development, some other components. So that's why we phased it in the way that we have. At the direction of council, if you want to give us some opposing direction to phase it differently, we could certainly take that as a BIR if you want us to consider that.
No, it's all good. Apparently, yeah. I think Mayor Herron had a question about that already. So that's good. I just, for some reason, it left my brain. I didn't want to come back and put it in writing. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you, everyone. Mayor Herron will welcome you back for Monday and you can have your chair back. I'm not sure I filled it very well, but nonetheless, I hope you had a great holiday and we'll see you on your return on Monday. And everyone else, we stand recessed until next Monday. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, that's